he took us to a reunion, and I remember seeing this computer with a program on it, and it was called Sol, which was like Eliza, but a very scaled down version. And for those of you who don't remember Eliza, it was a kind of a therapist simulator. So, and I think I was about 7 at the time, but I was totally fascinated by the idea that you had this computer simulating an empathetic person, and it blew my mind. So, you know, I was really lucky to have somebody in my family, my dad, expose me to what technology, what you could do with it. You know, at MIT, I saw people with holographic paintings and doing electronic music, and so, you know, that was technology for me. I mean, it wasn't like, you know, when I went to high school, people were, you know, writing 5 pages of code to see a line go across the screen. And, you know, to me, that wasn't what it was about. You know, it wasn't about just learning a code, it was about creating magic, you know. So I unfortunately also developed this need for instant gratification. I didn't want to write 6 or 10 pages of code. I get a book that would say something like AI on it, and I'd be like, oh, cool, you know, and I'd find out I'd have to write all this code, and I'd be like, oh, screw this. So I got more into electronic music and MIDI, and graphics and animation using public domain software, because I'm older than a lot of people are now. And I had a lot of gear, and I did a lot of music composition, but by the time I graduated from high school, there were no colleges to support my interests. And again, I was extremely fortunate to have this very supportive family. My grandmother bought me some electronic music equipment that now you could just buy a $5 app on your iPhone and do everything. So that's how I got into it. I had an extremely non-traditional background. I'm all self-taught. I have like an AS degree, but I'm mentoring people with masters. So anyway, I mean that's how I got into it. Thanks.
So for me, yes, we did not actually have a lot of technology in the house growing up. My mom had gone back to school and graduated with an English degree when I was probably a teenager, and my dad still to this day does not have a college degree. So we just didn't. I used to think it was big time to run to the neighbor's house and play Pong. That was great fun. And it's pretty amazing now as I watch my 4-year-old, play on the iPad so quickly. But I did always love the math, math and sciences, and really loved puzzles and problem solving. And that, to this day, if you go to the house, you'll see a jigsaw puzzle laid out on my table. And it's just something that I just feel real passionate about. And it's a nice break for me. As I mentioned, I started at the University of South Carolina and was a math major. And after a year, really questioned, what am I going to do with this degree? I just didn't want to teach. And I didn't want to make the investment to be a professor, with all the advanced degrees. I wanted to be able to start my career long before that. I looked at the Air Force because I wasn't sure what I was going to do. They had some assessments and some things you got to do, and they said, oh, you'd be a great programmer. And I said, all right, that sounds pretty cool, right? It was right about the time Desert Storm was going on. It sounded better than, learning languages that were going to put me overseas, or missile commands, or some of the other things that I was very concerned about. So this seemed like a pretty fun job, and that was really how I got my start. I didn't have a college degree as I joined the service, and they taught me. Went to a 3-month educational course. We learned fun things like Ada and Fortran, things that you really can use outside of the service, and ended up on a personnel system with COBOL. And did that for 4 years, and really had a good time. It was not exciting. It was, it was personnel programming, so it really was not that glamorous. But what that did do is lead to my next Air Force gig, which was computer-based training. And that was a lot more fun, where we were building, graphics of C-130 hydraulic courses, and you could click and turn levers and different things like that. So that was a lot of fun. And while I was in the service, I finished my degree in CS, and that was how I got my start.
Okay, so I know you're probably thinking, did she punch cards for 4 years? The answer is no, or I wouldn't be doing this. So we moved up to at least we could go to a library and work on a terminal, green screen. But, it's back to the problem solving. I love solving problems. So I went through, I took that first computer class my very first year. Like I said, I was going to do accounting. I took one business class and I said, whoa, my brain does not think this way. So I pursued the computer science degree, but when I got out, I did no internships. Got through, it was all fascinating, learning new things. Assembly was not my favorite class. So I remember going to a job interview and a guy's come in toward me and said assembler, and I was like, run the other way. So, but when I got out of school, I was like, I don't want to program. So I think when you talk about the pipeline problem, I think one of the things I would love to see happen in the community is exposing the younger generation to all the different roles and opportunities in this field. And I'm diagnosed ADD. I haven't really been diagnosed, but I think I've had it all my life. So, I started, I was like, I don't want to program. What do you got for me? And I found working for a graphics computer company, and I was training. I was like, fly around the world. That sounds beautiful. But it was a great place to start my career, because what I was doing is teaching people who had drafted on boards for years how to use a computer. Whoa. So it was very humbling and helpful for me to see the different types of people. But throughout my career, it was like, started out in training. After getting on planes every week and traveling, I was like, okay. I saw the guy literally had the assembler name tag on. He's like, you ready to be a developer? I was like, yes, I'm but you don't write assemblers to you anymore, or compilers. So I switched to development within a year, and throughout my career I did development, I did product management, I did QA testing, I did management, and got back into development when I had kids. So I tell people, explore. So, that's because I get very bored. And so it's like solve a problem. I'm that way now. I'm a fixer. I like to, in every job I've ever had, when things get in a good shape, I'm like, okay, what else you got for me that's broken? I need to fix something. So, but that's how I got into computer science. But to me, if there's anything I'd like to see change, it's how do we educate them on the world, on all the different facets of software. I had the opportunity to speak to a leadership class at University of Kentucky that they teach to seniors, and I jokingly told them all that there were different civil engineer, chemical, I said, y'all are all going into computer science anyway, so you might as well just get on the right page. But seriously, look at it. Look at how many engineering fields people get out. It's not what they want to do, and they end up computer science anyway. So we were on the right path from the very beginning. So, but that's my history.
All right. I actually wanted to involve audience for a second too, and I will I'll let you ask questions in a second. So this panel is kind of a little bit unusual because we all actually got computer science degrees, and that's how we got into the industry. And judging from the pipeline problem, that's not how it happens. So I wanted to ask you guys, how many of you are in the technology field right now? If you raise your hand. 100%. Yeah. Okay, so how many of you actually graduated with computer science degrees? Computer science. So now it drops a little bit, so that's not how we got into it. And then how many of you knew whenever you were in school that this is what you wanted to do? You actually wanted to be a computer scientist, whatever that means. 3 people, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 out of this whole audience. So this kind of demonstrates the pipeline problem in general, and especially when it involves women. And the next question is going to be for Beth, but I'll let you ask a question.
Well, it's about the pipeline question, the issue. If we're talking about younger women today, we're talking about millennials. And one of the definitions of them as a group is it's the first generation to grow up with video games. and cell phones. So that means something really different, and a lot of people have analyzed this to be a major influence, that from children, they have technology in their hands and they're using it. But now we're hearing that women are actually less disposed, or once they become women, towards these influences. So I'm really curious what you think about that, this generational aspect.
Yeah.
So again, getting involved in the university, trying to understand this, I had the opportunity to meet a young lady at the University of Kentucky, and I asked her, I said, so what is different from you being a teenager and me? And she said, she pointed out something that was very astute. She goes, I love to play video games. So she loves to play video games, and she's studying computer science. She's got 2 more years to go. But she said, when I play online video games, I never speak up, because when I do, I'm gonna be abused. So it's like, whoa, that's interesting dynamic. First of all, there weren't video games in Horse Caver in 1980s, so. So that's understanding these things that are different, and what are the things that maybe turn them off or scare them about this. So that's one thing I learned. I wanted to comment on the video game, but the interest in technology is there. Everybody's got their hands on it. But I think it's an image and perception problem. My belief is at a very early age, that maybe telling them I don't want to do this. My niece is in the 7th grade. She had like her first profile test, and the guidance counselor said, you need to be an engineer. And she looked at her and she said, well, I don't want to build bridges. And I was like, oh, Lord. Seriously. So they don't even know what that means. So we don't even educate them on what that means and what opportunities are out there. So I'm like, okay, there's one problem. So, I'm trying to dig in and understand, because there's definitely some cultural and social things that are very different that I didn't have exposure to, that I think are driving away. So.
And actually, I'm going to have a follow-up question for you on that.
Okay.
Since you are involved in the educational system, not in the system, but you're a chair now, and that's, first of all, really admirable, so thank you for doing that. And shortage of women in IT and STEM fields is often attributed to our educational system. So what do you think is preventing women from seeing software and technology as a viable career choice? And have you encountered any issues there?
Again, I'll give a good example, a data point. Ann Richards School, I had the opportunity to do a tour there, and they have a program for anybody who's interested, and I strongly encourage you. They take these girls as juniors, and they prepare them, and they go for a week in the field. So I said, sign me up. Great opportunity. I can tell you that one data point right there, at the school level, this is public school, Ann Richards is a public school, and AISD, they had no idea, very little exposure to computer science in general, which I was kind of blown away. But we have to make ourselves available and show them what it is like. And so bringing them into my work for a whole week and exposing them and having them talk to the person who does user interface design, the person who does documentation, the person who does QA testing, the person who does management, everything, soup to nuts. They left there like, wow, we had no idea. So that's really, the problem is the exposure. And some of us, may have had high-tech parents. My kids, my son is a computer science major, but he's been around it, he's emulated. For those students who are very capable and talented, if they don't have exposure to it, and we all need to be role models, and we need to show them it's fun. I've had students, that's not the first time I've done it, they're like, wow, I had no idea this would be fun. You gotta show it to them.
So I have a few simple questions. I think I'm going to end up with more questions than answers coming out here.
I always do.
Yeah, I've got a page of thoughts already. Where are the people who left, who abandoned? Why aren't we asking them what happened? Where are the people who didn't choose the path? Why aren't we asking them why? My dad was on the Apollo pickup crew, and in the 60s, we had this big push for engineering and so on. Certainly our values have changed over the year, but what are the reasons and what are the tipping points? Why are people, women, abandoning and so on?
Are you in academics, in career, any specific guidance?
Well, you know, in different industries, there's gonna be a certain amount of move from this kind of job to that kind of job. I've changed my basic role, you know, my domain 3 times. I would expect to change it at least once more. I mean, that they leave may be actually a sign of great clarity. I don't know. The inmates running the asylum, maybe that's not a place to hang around. But how do we answer the question when we're not gathering that data? Because why they left, and, you know, us thinking we know how to solve the problem, are we gathering the data we need? The people who left matter more than the people who stayed for this problem.
Well, I think there actually has been articles written by women that have left, and it's very risky to talk about.
Yeah, I mean,
why
that's one aspect. It's a very transient, I mean, the technology itself is a treadmill. The companies come and go. Maybe they're also more stability minded, or there are lots of potential other reasons, but if we just decide we know what they are instead of chasing them, are there sociologists doing big studies and lots
No,
of
I
different
mean, I guess my point, and this is a little more about some of the actual difficulties that women in technology as engineers are running into that are causing them to leave. Not necessarily, you know, I think what's happening is there's a lot of fear when I have friends that have left, and it can be very traumatic. So sometimes the last thing they want to do is engage in a conversation, because it's a very difficult decision to make. If you leave an industry because you feel like it's just, I mean, you really love it, but you don't belong there, that's a really, really tough decision to make, and it can be pretty devastating. So I don't really see these women kind of lining up for, some of them do post articles or blogs, and it's very difficult for them to do that, but in my experience, the women that I know that have made that choice, they don't come up, and they just want to forget about it.
I'm going to redirect it for a second. So we're going to talk about retention issues in a second. So we haven't really gotten there yet as far as, you know, the reasons for why people are leaving. But also I just wanted to say that because people stay doesn't mean they didn't encounter the same issues. So, you know, we can't talk to everyone, but
are the
kind of
issues different from any other?
Yeah, back to the pipeline though. I have a question about your current topic. The 3% high school pipeline. Now, 2 fields that don't seem to be having any trouble with the female pipeline are law and medicine, and even to some extent finance. Is it just possible that the young women are just a lot smarter than the young men? You know, see more social rewards, more stability. Hollywood for the last 30 years has been doing its level best to portray computer scientists as slobbering fat idiots.
Well, again, being involved, just last week looked at some data at the University of Kentucky, and you know, it's probably a good sampling. You know, we wear a shoe, sometimes not. Anyway. But if you get women in computer science in Kentucky, you got this mastered. But no, we're monitoring enrollment.
Right.
You got to attract first.
Right.
So we've got programs in place, so the enrollment is coming up, and just because I'm old, I brought some of those numbers. So over the last 5 years, we've seen enrollment go from 13% in engineering, I want to say College of Engineering, not computer science, to 19%. So it's like we're doing some right things there. They hired a recruiter that's focused on diversity. This last summer, they started a summer camp for introducing women. So there's a lot of universities are doing some things. It's coming up. Now, you get back to the next problem. The next data point is first and second year lost and dropout, keeping them. And that has gone the other direction, 14% to 9%. 11% to 4%. So we have, it's back to looking at, we're all engineers, looking at the data. Looking at the data, we are going to focus our initiatives and our recommendations on retention. So we've got some good initiatives coming in, but the retention part. And having interviewed some students, here's what I'm learning. Number one, and I can attest to this myself, confidence level is not real high in me, believe it or not. Question myself, can't do it 100%, I may say, no, it's not for me. So confidence level, maybe take fear of failure. I know my brothers, they'd be like, yeah, try this, fail, fall down, break, whatever. Me, I'm like, oh, if I can't do it, if I'm gonna fail, so I think there's some factors here. But the support groups, what I'm trying to do, and you can look at some universities, there's mentor programs. I'd love to see us do this in the community. Let's get some mentor programs for young women. What can we do to mentor and coach and encourage? Maybe they're in the wrong place. Not every software company in the world is a bad place, but there's some bad ones out there, I believe, based on reading some articles. But mentor and support, I think, is key, both at the collegiate retention level, and I think some of these solutions apply in keeping them in the career piece too. We just need, I'm that way, I'm relational, as Chris said, and I need support group and I need encouragement. So, hope that helps. I don't know if anybody had.
Well, the next follow-up question here is, what can we do to increase these numbers? So instead of, so you would think that the percentage of women would be increasing in the enrollment in computer science, but it's been dropping since 1984, which was close to a half. It was about half and half, and computer science was 34% or so. Now it's down to 10%. So I will get you in a second. So what do you guys think? How can we help young women get interested in technology as a career choice? And Beth already covered that one. So anybody else wants to add anything?
Hello. I think, I mentioned before, the big thing that got me into it was seeing technology as a way to create magic. And I think that you had mentioned, again, before, showing all the opportunities that are available through technology. It's not just, you sit in a cubicle at a computer and it's, akin to data entry. There's a lot that you can do with it. Pretty much anything you want to do, showing that, hey, you can have your own startup and, be an entrepreneur, and, you can be a contractor and have a boat and, travel around the world. Or, it gives you the freedom to work anywhere, because if you're a programmer, you can pretty much get a job anywhere in the world as a contractor. It's, there's a ton of different options that you can't do with other types of jobs. And I think if, show that flashy lifestyle, sell that dream. Because, women, you look at TV and, like you were mentioning, they've got the lawyers and the doctors and the drama going on, but they don't have that, little girls watch TV, they don't see anything good about anything that, good point.
I think the few female computer scientists we have in some of our, criminal minds and those kind of things, really aren't even taken seriously. They're comic relief and things like that. So even the few that we have are not really well portrayed in the media. And I think I really agree with the other panelists that when I was working with the Women in Computing group at Brigham Young University, I was really amazed when they said, they was like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm getting my degree, but I really don't know what I'm going to do with this. I don't like to code. I'm like, well, there's so many things that you can do. There's product management, right? There's QA. There's program management and working with Agile and Scrum Masters and process training. There's training, software training. So I think educating people that what does it mean to be an engineer? I think when you think about law and you think about medicine, those are very clear definitions of what you're going to do when you grow up. It's not as clear when you say I'm an engineer. And then I think the other thing is, really having programs in our workplace with bring your daughters to work and exposing them and making technology fun to build and not just fun to consume, right?
So I have one quick thing to add to that of just, if you look at the structure of our education programs, they're way out of sync of what a job in software actually looks like. And I think that disconnect drives a lot of people away that would actually have a lot of fun and be excited about it if they had a better idea of what the career would actually be like. So, fixing our education system to be more relevant and representative of industry, I think would be another thing that we could improve.
I just wanted to add that one thing that I forgot, sorry. I know that's kind of breaking out of the rules, but I have two sons, and I work, there's some really fun-looking software places. I worked in one company that had I worked at Rackspace. They have a mall that they've completely taken over. It's got a slide. It looks like a giant playground. So I took my sons there, and I'm like, look, you can work here. And they're like, oh my God! And then, when I was, they've been to like EA Games, and they saw in a conference room there's like this giant ball pit. They're like, oh my God, I want to write software. So I think if, bring some girls into some of these cool, playground-like offices, then, it'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, I wanted to add something there, and I think you were the one who brought it up about Minecraft. It's something as simple as that, building mods with kids. My niece loves doing it. Before that, we bought her a Raspberry Pi. She, went through her Python little book, and she was like, all right, I'm done, because she couldn't do anything fun with it. So she got it, but she wasn't interested. And once she figured out she can skin little blocks, and her little brother, they were shooting chickens instead of arrows, so they figured out how to mod that. And so there are different ways of getting people involved. And gentleman in the back.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I'd like to say thanks for sharing your stories and your journeys. It's just so informative. It's awesome. The key point I wanted to ask is a lot of the statistics in the pipeline and all that we've heard, is it very American specific? Because maybe in India, since the 80s, they have had more women in computer science. And there are some trends in America, like income inequality, that are not trending in the same way in other countries. And maybe there's just something to learn, Or there's nothing against the University of Kentucky. Or
No.
Just broaden it a bit.
You make it successful there, we got this. We got this. Now, I wanted to share just, I know you probably think everybody should know this off the top of their head, but I calculated what is my organization, my software group, percentage of females 22. I'm like, that's pretty good. Okay, now let me break it down for you. 12% of that is in the US. I have 30% of my team in the Ukraine. Now this is my team. So it's interesting because Lana, we talked about this. I was like, what's going on? Something, that's a factor. So I don't know, Lana, if you want to kind of share, it's just the exposure, the culture from young girls, it's very different. So I'll tee it up for her to share.
Yeah, and I never put any thought into it, but whenever I never thought that I could not be good possibly at math and sciences because girls pay more attention, so I assumed girls were smarter, no offense. So, and that's the attitude I came into it, then I was like, oh, we're equal, great. But I think my parents are both doctors, so I'm skewed in that, so I come from a scientific background somewhat, but at the same time I took so much math and sciences. By 9th grade I graduated at 15. Here, so whenever I actually transferred over, I had, I took Calc 2 by the time I was 15 years old. And that kind of takes the fear out of it, and because there are a lot of stereotypes. Girls want to be accepted, boys do too. We want to do things that are not going to make us stand out. We want to be just like everybody else. So if science is not something that scares you, you're not going to, afraid to stand out doing that. So that's my personal experience with that. So yeah, take fear out of math. That's the first thing you hear. Like when I tell people that I'm an engineer, they're like, "Oh, you're an engineer? That's a lot of math." I'm like, it's not so bad. It's just that's why I program, so I don't have to do math. Yeah. Go ahead.
So I have a question about it. Is it really just math, or is there a cultural also difference in the way maybe growing up in a different country versus growing up in the United States. So I have 3 girls, 3 daughters, and the oldest one is studying engineering. However, she has 0 interest in studying or specializing in computer science or being a software engineer. She's talking about petroleum engineering. You want to talk about a male-dominated industry. So, you know, something is going on that, you know, maybe it's not cool to be, you know, a computer software engineer, or what is it? So maybe you guys could talk about that a little.
I think it's definitely coolness factor is a part of it.
And I would tell her, they all end up computer science. I'm telling you, I had a student that reached out to me that was graduating from University of Kentucky, mechanical engineering. He hadn't even graduated yet. He goes, hey, you heard of this thing called Makerspace? I want to do computer science. I want to work in software in Austin. I was like, you just got your degree. When did you figure this out? Oh, a few years ago. I just didn't change my major. And I'm like, oh my word. So anyway, but it is interesting, the appeal of the different engineering sectors. Again, looking at some data in the College of Engineering, all the disciplines we offer, you see different, more attractive engineering fields for females. Biomedical being one. And I saw that same trend at Ann Richards. So again, it's either they don't know what it's about, and I know that's not the case with your daughter, because I know you go home and talk about work, probably. But that may be part of the problem. I wonder. My kids are like, I don't want to do that. I'll be a crazy person when I get home. Or I work all the time and never do anything fun.
Take that last question. Well, 2 last
But
questions.
giving them an exposure to it, you know, are they making a well-informed decision? I'll just stop there. And I'm sure your daughter, she's interested in petroleum engineering, sorry, but tell her she'll end up computers.
I just wanted to piggyback on what you're saying because I thought it was very powerful. As a female in technology and who does not have a computer science degree, I have my undergraduate in leisure services and studies from Florida State University, where all the athletes are in college programs with me, and I have my my master's degree in design and development training. So I am nowhere near. I failed assembly, which is why I did not get my computer science degree. I am slightly dyslexic, severely dyslexic. So yeah, of course I failed that one. But what I thought was fascinating is that I coach so many girls who are in the marketing department, customer service, I'm a product person. So product, QA, training, the whole bit, they just don't know what's there. They have this, I've got to get my computer science degree, I've got to be the guy behind the computer. And that's just not true. I mean, there's so many things that they can do, and we need them desperately. We need everybody. But it's also that game of, you know, at the end of the day, when you're always the only girl in the room, and I mean always, it kind of does become intimidating. So you have to kind of know that going in. And as someone who was in a sorority of 250 girls, and I was the very first one to put in this little study book, which I save all my